All right, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, we're good to go. All right, so this is our second show of the day. Laura Eisenhower. It's going to be very interesting to sit down and talk to her right now. She's been putting out a lot of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and play the intro right now and let people come in and be right back. How's it going, everybody? Got Laura Eisenhower's in the house. Welcome everybody on YouTube and on the Facebook pages and in the Zoom room. Let's get Laura up here. Hang on. All right, let's see. Here we go. Panelist. Okay. And start video. What's happening, Laura Eisenhower?
Hey, Todd, how are you doing?
I don't know. I still got my head. But yeah, yesterday was crazy, wasn't it, man? I mean, it was just like insane. I don't know how it was going on in your world, but I had 3 shows. Magenta had a migraine, and then the next 2 shows, so we rescheduled till Friday, but the next 2 shows I couldn't get the shows going. And then I knew, I was like, you know what? You're not supposed to be on today. So I had spent the night before with Merlin. All day long Merlin's popping in. And then I put up a video. I was watching a video, like Stories of Old on YouTube. This guy does some really good work. And I just started, I just showed people the video, and I said, I don't know what's going on. And I mean, like, hundreds of people coming out and just saying, wow, what is going on? I mean, like, it was the first time I've ever seen such proof of a collective energy hitting all of us, you know? So I don't know. How was your day yesterday?
Oh my gosh. It just never ceases to amaze me just how epic everything it just not always comfortable. Lots of sort of ups and downs, just really definitely like super busy to the point of things spilling over and having to reschedule. And because sometimes you just never know, especially doing readings and energy work, if one can just really be fully present if there's a lot
Yeah.
going on. Kids are home and they're but yeah, it's all just so intense, so much to process constantly. And yesterday and this morning, yeah, just had to move through and clear a lot of stuff. I was just
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah. Like yesterday, people were talking about anything they planned didn't work out. Electronics were going crazy. And then I had a show this morning. I had forgotten about it. I didn't see it on the schedule. And this beautiful lady named Gabrielle, she's over in Scotland. She's from Germany. And I just jumped on. I was like, I'm sorry I'm late, And I said, wow, what's going on the last day? She goes, I don't know, in this, kind of broken English, the German. And she was so cute. She's like, I don't know what's going on. All I can tell you is it's like the divine feminine got on a fucking rocket and shot up into the stars, and we're in our power now. And I said, well, that's pretty much, but that's one of the things that seems to have come out of this new wave of energy is this is beyond what's been said in the past. Oh, well, she stepped into her power. She's making her presence known. This is something different. This is like that rocket ship metaphor to me really, really, even though it was funny, was really profound, because this is like something that's not going to be stopped now. I mean, this energy is here. It's done.
Absolutely. I totally feel that. Anytime, there's an adversity, or one feels pushed into the corner, if they're truly switched on, if they're truly in touch with their authentic self and their inner divine masculine and feminine, I mean, there's no stopping that force, because it goes way beyond this density that we're in. So we're reaching into things that adversity is, forcing us to reclaim as well. And it's not something that's intellectual. It's something that just, it's just the fire. Like I can just feel it. And people, the synchronicities too, of people gathering for round tables, been doing a lot of round tables,
Yeah,
been
I saw that.
connecting more with women lately than normal. And it's just kind of like, okay, this is the response that is most necessary and needed. And just being able to share the information and the heartfelt words and wisdom with one another. The spectrum is huge, because there's so many, aspects and so many different levels of understanding of all this, and what it means right now on the planet to have that amplified feminine energy in balance with the masculine, and how many like men are going through these huge growth periods of really, really coming down into their hearts more, and really seeing like, gosh, it's so much easier to have like really good friendships without the weird matrix like interferences that just so yeah, I'm seeing it across the board. And there's an amplification of also troll activity and a lot of, kind of darkness. But because we're in the shift, we're seeing this on a grand scale. Like we're about to take a huge leap. These astrological alignments are really, really powerful and strong. And so, this is usually where some kind of false flag, some sort of next level of dark agenda, is going to come in. But we're built with the ability to go beyond that adversity or those catalysts or the mind control aspect of it, while also appreciating that there are realities too that we can't deny.
That's right.
There's real illness and sickness, but yeah, these plans have been in the works for a while, just like the guardian forces and the benevolent ones coming in, preparing for this window period. I mean, this is the ultimate showdown, and these falsity can't win. It expires. So the more people unhook, the better off we are, the more we're going to see this transformation accelerate for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think you can't turn a blind eye to what's happening, because it's all part of our experience, and it gives you the backdrop, to gain the potential of a greater alignment by the extremity of the polarities. Basically, I mean, there's some crazy shit going on, and you can't, and it's like somebody's trying to put a cap on a bottle of lightning. It's coming out. And I think one of the things that I really applaud you for is that, like, especially since last time we talked and you came out with that incredible video message to the controllers, but you just ramped it up. You ramped it up from that point on. You had the round tables. I popped in on a few of the things that you've done. Yeah, you had that collaboration with David Rodriguez. Is that his name?
Yeah.
But it's not so much the words, it's the energy of what you're putting out. And it's exactly what I'm trying to lead to here. Even with this woman this morning, this feminine energy is taking responsibility, full responsibility, and saying, I've had enough of this, it's time. Right. And that's a powerful thing that seems to be expanding right now, because a lot of women are stepping up.
Yeah. It doesn't work to just be quiet and just sort of let it play out, or just send it a lot of light and love. I mean, we really need to amplify the voice and the frequency of our voices and our truth, and however, it comes out, it is what it is. I mean, sometimes I know what I share isn't the most polished thing, but in my heart, it's like, okay, this is not going to be a polarized message to the best of my ability, because love has to wash over all this dark. And it's not just love as in being recognizing of the family connections a global family is universal love. It's a frequency. It's connected to the 0 point unified field. It's a truth frequency. And it's love because it doesn't really exist in duality. So the more we bring it in, the less of these polarities we get played by. Because we have to see the multiple options, just like we can operate from an aspect of self, but we don't want to negate aspects of ourselves that we need to bring unconditional love to and understanding to. And that's how we heal, physical wounds and illness is to shine unconditional love and understanding and clarity and awareness on those places that are actually calling out for our attention.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And bringing that stuff to the table is what I'm seeing is huge right now. And it has been, but I mean, it's really huge right now, is to talk about what's happening. And I think that's very important, because the more information and code that people are exposed to, the better they're going to be in terms of their potential to find alignment. That video that you did, A Message to the Controllers, was, in my opinion, there was no polarization in that message. That message was a perfect blend of, like, and I'll just put it in these terms, it was a perfect blend of like higher self and human self. So you were saying, hey, you know what? I know from a higher level, we're all up there looking at this thing and it's an energy game or whatever. But I'm here. I'm incarnated as a human. And this is what the F's going on. And, we're calling it out. And so I thought you did an excellent job, because you brought in both facets of the higher, we call the higher self, and the human self, which I hold on the same level. But you also address some issues without being polarizing. And that was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal video, by the way.
I really appreciate it. I was surprised it reached so many, and that was really what I was holding in my heart. So I'm glad it came across that way.
Well, it was very real. It was very real. And you said not so polished. I'm not polished either, but I mean, people respond to that realness. And that's why I think it was so effective, because it was just real,
Yeah, I mean, it was something was definitely coming through, and it's like, I just want to talk to them directly. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy the type of species or beings they are. And eventually I think people will be more open to educating themselves about, what is the nature of the cabal and the deep state, and what have these family lines been through, and how did they get this way, and what are the deeper rooted reasons behind this even existing on the planet. And it really comes down to, a lot about our own inner work. I mean, we're on this free will experience. We're learning how to use power correctly. And we're given the gift of ego to figure out a way to align it with the greater aspects of self. So it becomes a vehicle to generate, a much greater reality than something that's externalized and constantly trying to hook into us. And it infects our creative energy. It takes over our minds, throws us into a survival chakra. And then the rest of us, it's being operated by an agenda, a narrative. And that's just not going to work anymore. And so, yeah, sometimes the greatest growth requires a heavy amount of, adversity, but that doesn't excuse any of the criminal activity behind it, of course, either. No. But regardless of the catalyst, regardless of the adversity, it always can push us into reaching more into ourselves, because, as we switch on dormant DNA, I mean, this is the vibration of like things being able to alchemize in an immediate way, being able to manifest things based on, willpower, being able to heal things with your hands, I mean, so we're at a level where, illness and financial struggle and injustice is still very much the name of the game. But yeah, when we get, pushed to the edge, we have nowhere left to go but to reclaim the rest of all that we are. And those that don't, that keep giving, their power away to individuals that might not be, looking out for them, they'll either create a major breakthrough in this lifetime, or they'll continue on and eventually, recover that treasure that has been somewhat kept from us, the treasure of who we really are, what we're made of, what our junk DNA is, what the divine template is all about, and this greater love story that we're all actually longing for on a soul level. Most people are very wounded and traumatized, and some are experiences that they can recall and remember, and they have the stories, but some it's just become so unconscious that the very lifestyles that they live is in response to how to deal with this theft and this broken connection with nature and our concept of the mother and our concept of ourselves that is just masked with, different personality traits or attaching to, certain things in the matrix, programming and conditioning that keeps them from being able to really open their mind or go into those greater explorative journeys and discoveries about, what else is there. But, this is a time of just, really realizing that there's powerful energy that's going to soothe the deepest of wounds. And so those attachments aren't going to sound so or feel so necessary, especially when we lift up the curtain, we see how much darkness actually exists behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point about a good reason again for talking about this stuff, because you just did another one. I don't know if it was a post or a video. I can't remember because my 3D brain's not working, and it was talking about it's time to rise. And what I love about the message is when you just said it a minute ago too, it's like I woke up this morning and I was like, why am I getting offended? I went through this whole thing of like, okay, I'm not going to comply, but I'm not going to rebel, not rebel in the sense of like, where the emotions or the ego gets involved, but how do I find this place? And one of the things I got this morning was, why am I offended? Yeah, I should be offended. We all should be offended. What is that? Is me being offended part of playing in that atmosphere that's been created, the conflict and the competition and all that? Is there another way? And then I finally realized this is hurting my soul. It's hurting my soul. So this is why the rise up is Todd Rise Up. When you did that video, I saw it and I was just like, jumping out of my shorts, man. I was like, holy crap. So I sat down and I thought, well, I'm going to do one of mine. I'm going to go off of what she said. And because I saw Magenta made one the next day, and I was like, man, I'm going to do one, not just for my ego, but I was like, I got something to say too. But that video, I spent probably 2 or 3 days sitting there with that idea of doing a live. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because you sent me into so many different streams of questioning. Like I was questioning at a deeper, why are you going to do that? Why do you need to say that? Is this the right, it's such a subtle playing field of engagement that's been laid out in this duality by these controllers that you really got to pay attention. And that's what that taught me. That taught me question every single thing, even as they come in. Is this mine? Is it not mine? Every single thing. I think we're moving at that speed now. We can learn so quickly and we can align much quicker than we ever thought.
Oh yeah. And also self-correcting, kind of get back on track. So if something starts to pull us away and into a trap or into a belief system that doesn't really serve one, or is something that's an old conditioning or an old wound coming to the surface that's being projected on, what we're seeing or the kind of information we gravitate to. I mean, I'm constantly in that zone, myself. So I'm like, okay, did I just say that? Should I post that? Because some of these are just casual moments. And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to come across. And I even question So sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe, also take a break from overly, thinking too much. But I love to process because it just keeps things real. So, when I think of the word offense, to me, there's certain things, if we persist in, it might not be healthy. But to me, like a reaction of offense is a very appropriate response. Like, I think even depression and anger is an appropriate response to the desecration of, all like sacred things in the world, things that we're trying to preserve and protect as guardians. Any assault on those things, nature, animals, children, or just any of us, because we're all grown up children, really. It's hard not to be offended because, that starts to build boundaries, to be like, wow, that's really insulting and offensive. It's the same boundary we need to have when there's a lot of chemicals in food, or there's something else outside of the human sphere that if we put into our body, it's going to compromise us and actually offend ourselves or offend our organs. And so then we can make better choices or have better boundaries. But yeah, I think if we're constantly offended, It's important to balance it out and make sure, and obviously, we're totally on such a similar wavelength. Yeah. So I'll find myself maybe in one thought form and it's persisting. And then I'll just like really push the doorway open to re-enter the zone of just immense gratitude and also forgiveness and compassion. But, and sometimes that's hard for people to hear because it almost sounds like, I don't think people are just light and loving it away. I think a lot of the deceptions connected to that being the way to move energy, people are realizing it's just not enough. Yeah. And that's what I love about what you're sharing, more of a voice. It doesn't mean it has to be condemning and angry, even though that might be a part of the process to be able to begin to have an authentic voice. But meditation is just not enough. Light and loving things away are not enough. I mean, we need to share information and just be a resource and try and detach from the criticism or the response we get. Yeah. But we need to be active in emitting a frequency that can create correction and that acts as an antidote, because our words can uplift each other and literally like make a person's day and even bring them to tears, or our words can absolutely crush a person and maybe give them a complex for the rest of their life if it happened at a young enough age, right? So that's the troll tactic is, people are sharing great messages. Let's just put a gang of people on them to ruin their day, make them feel like crap. And so the subtleties of frequency when it comes to the way we express ourselves hold way more creative power than I think we can begin to grasp, because that's what got us into this mess. Yeah. Television, mind control, social engineering, doing what, wanting to fit in and allowing the mind to be infected. And so it takes not that long to correct it by just, recognizing, like you said, step back. Is that mine? Where is that coming from? Is that really my truth? Because truth is going to make us healthy. It's going to shift us into a higher vibration on a physical level. If it's, not truth, our body tends to revolt a bit. And it doesn't mean that every time a person gets sick, it means they're not in their truth, because sometimes we have to move energy out and get sick. And I know, talking about the coronavirus is a whole nother thing, but that's on a much more collective level. This is the ultimate growth period to begin to move on from the old paradigm to recognize, wow, they're stepping it up and they're revealing themselves more and more. People are actually really seeing like, this is insanity. And the fire is too strong in most people to be able to just sit back and accept it. But Steve, the frequency, the override frequency is our truth.
Yeah, Steve Velarde just said we also can and should exercise sacred and divine anger. But I think you're right. You can't just go find that middle point. You've got to swing on that pendulum. And, I spent the last few days, and I thought I'd pretty much kind of equalize this stuff, but I spent some time watching police brutality videos, other stuff I was researching, and it was pissing me off. I had to admit, I was like, okay, wait a minute now, how do I handle this? It's got to be something in myself. And I know that sounds like passive or something, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to get out and say something. And I love what you said too about, you're putting stuff up, on video and on post, and it encompasses the entire spectrum, like I was talking about earlier, from the higher self to the human self and everything in between, and all of it's gold because it's raw. It's raw. It's okay to feel that sacred anger, if it's me, for instance, and put something out and, in that moment. These thing with the trolls and the antagonistic energy, I mean, that can have a big effect on people. I'm watching that have a big effect on people. And it's almost like, how do you just put it out and just don't look back,
Yeah.
Because it's hard for me at times not to engage that type of energy.
Yeah. I had to block about 10 people recently, and it depends what time of day I see it. Sometimes it's just like, it's so easy to want to snap back, and sometimes I do. And sometimes I just respectively answer, and I realize there's nothing I can say. So I usually start off on the higher road, being as respectful as possible, and that doesn't work. And then they get worse. And then it's just like, block, see you later. But the anger, it's an element. It's the fire element. We're made of earth, air, fire, water, ether. And so there's always going to be a shadow to everything. And so maybe the shadow of, passion and fire and inspiration and taking action is a bit of anger, but it fuels the passion and fire because one can see, hey, this is what I want to, I don't know if the word fight for is the best, but this is what matters. This is what fuels the mission. Right. And I think there's definitely strands of, anger, because anger, is not a reaction to maybe stay stuck in, because it ends up not being healthy to our bodies. But if we like move through that and understand what it represents, why it's getting our attention, then it is like a sacred anger, because it's like wanting to protect the children, wanting to protect the earth, wanting to protect our families and relationships and friendships and everything. So when something tries to pull it away, okay, anger can be the response, but what's the passion? What's the mission? What action do we need to take in order to, bring about some, level of justice without being stuck in the duality? And like the water element, the shadow side of the water element can be depression or just apathy, the inability to just want to get up and even, do anything. But it's also revealing of what our deepest soul longing is that we don't feel we have. So we don't feel appeased. And so it just kind of brings us down. But when we start to mix all these elements together, they all serve each other to then, begin to reach goals and see life change for the better, because we got up and we did something. People are so used to hearing what to do and being told what to do. And this is where I feel the biggest part of the paradigm shift is people are going to say, I'm not going to listen to that. Right. And yes, we don't want to rebel or be in denial either. So it's a major balancing act. And that's why these conversations are so important, because we're all processing this together. There's no real right or wrong way to do it. But the most important thing is that we at least have integrity. And if we have that foundation, then there'll always be a home base to return to when things get a little bit off balance.
True that. Yeah. And that's my whole thing. It's like, I'm okay now with getting angry, but I can sit with the anger. I can do something with some forethought, or I can just react. And so I've gotten pretty good at not reacting, but I'm still pissed off, so I still have to work on it. And I want to ask you
on that too. Oh man.
Right? I wanted to ask you, like you mentioned the junk DNA. And so there's so many different ways, I guess, we could kind of like appraise or gauge our progress. So something like this, how much of our junk DNA has been activated? Or is there some type of better way to explain it, like through the correlation of what's happening in the cosmos with the planetary movements and alignments and that type of thing? Because I know something big's going on.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, the soul group. Some people are born with a little bit more awakeness. They can see through the programmings. They don't go through that big grand awakening. They might, as far as, some of the information that I think a lot of us, I don't know, we're always learning, but I think, there's some that just have more switched on, and some label them, indigo or crystal kids, or some of the guardian groups and the angelic lines. But, we all are inheritors of this. Everybody has that potential. So those that are born like strong and aware in their mission tend to be the activators. They help to switch on the dormant strands. A lot of our consciousness and our awareness and wisdom and love nature already exists in these upper strands and connects into like galactic chakras that all hold the codes of sacred union, alchemical marriage, and hierogamic union. The avatar consciousness is a hierogamic union expression of integration of polarity to the point where there is no junk, because the junk is a product of imbalance. And also the scrambled fire codes, what we see in the outer world is the chaos amongst each other. They're scrambled because we're scrambled. So when we start to unify and come together, and we start to heal ourselves and work on our partnerships and relationships, it begins to, switch those dormant strands on. But there is a bit of a limitation because we're still waking up in this density every morning. So it's kind of hard to all of a sudden wake up, and have the advanced consciousness be something that the body absolutely and totally reflects, because we're still dealing with the heavy density of, just the world around us, the interfering technologies, and just a lot of the stuff that are, frequency modulations and distortions of these very energies. So there's very much the need to clear it constantly and do constant energy work to bring those codes in, to bring those activations in, but being up against the things that almost sink one's vibration, right? So a lot of people struggle. They're like, oh, everything feels so heavy, but they're way advanced or star seed types or whatever, and their consciousness is way ahead, but they're still struggling with the physical body. So as we integrate our higher awareness into our physical lifestyle and we commit to it and make it a way of life, it really begins to purify and clear everything. And in these times right now, the mitochondrial DNA is healing, and that's our connection to the mother that gets passed down to us from the mother. And there's been a lot of damage in that particular part of our being, and it actually connects to the ether, the fifth element. So the platonic solid dodecahedron connected to it was put in a reversal. The inverted pentagram is very symbolic of our inability to really access the ether, but that changed when the sun started to move through Ophiuchus. So when we can connect with the cosmic and earthly events that are going on, it's going to be possible for us to upgrade and actually purify the nucleic acids of our DNA and to clear the elementals of earth, air, fire, water through this ether. And that actually helps to purify and clean the elements of the earth because the earth responds to us. But, you know, with these agendas and with all the distraction, not all of it is distraction, but all the stuff pulling our attention away, you know, the artificial intelligence systems and the false narratives and the things that are trying to steal and siphon that energy, which it's been doing for thousands of years, but way worse previous to where we are now, except the mind control is so bad that people don't even know what's available because they've been so conditioned out of feeling it intuitively. And that education was never given to us. We don't learn this stuff in school. So somebody would have to really dig deep to know, oh, are we really in this time right now where all this is possible? And that's kind of where my heart and research has gone to. But anyway, so when we can give ourselves plenty of a break from it and really turn off the electronics, especially at night, to just really gain that connection, our capacity to upgrade our DNA is very strong. But there's a lot about how we're sharing in this together. And that's the unity consciousness piece. If somebody goes through a big upgrade, they can easily, with the 100th monkey kind of effect, raise the vibration of everybody else. But it depends on that person's soul sort of architecture or just some of the agreements they came in with, the level of influence they might hold, just as, you know, these dark groups are holding the planet in a very low density. So once we stop feeding into it and we sever the ties and we're not locked into the attachments or the dependency or the addiction matrix part of it, and we pull that vital life force back to us and we begin to work on solutions and community and building a better world, the DNA is just going to switch on very easily, more easily now than it has been for 26,000 years or so, because all the cataclysms and exploded planets and all these different things threw the planetary body off, and we haven't been in alignment with the galactic plane like we are right now. So this is a collective thing, but there's also people who will go through like maybe a huge upgrade and maybe nobody else around them did. And if they can hold that space and that frequency, they can activate a lot of people. But if they start to get attacked or they start to drop their vibration and start to match, then they kind of, you know, it's like the record got scratched or something. It's like, oh, gotta repair it.
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, we've received a lot of intel similar to that. One of the things I noticed too is so with the whole
kind of like take it with a grain of salt, you know, I just share what comes through. But yeah, I mean, there's many ways to explain or look at it, but that's cool. You're getting that too. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say along those lines. So like if you look at the quarantine thing, right? And what I was noticing is that like you have all these countries taking certain stances, and then within the countries you have, you know, states or municipalities that are kind of like bucking, they're moving the other direction, you know, like, you know, the governor wants to close down the beaches in California, and then the local government says, hell no, we're going to do it anyway. So, and Elton Musk just said he was going to open up, you know, but there's a lot of like, you know, in the composite of the whole, there's a lot of like, you know, energy that's kind of pushing against each other. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. You know, it looks very chaotic, you know, but at the same time, I think it says something about, you know, people questioning and that whole integrity factor that you were talking about. So I kind of think it's a good sign. What do you think?
Yeah, chaos is just you know, a part of things. I mean, there's a greater intelligence within, you know, every piece of what might seem to be chaotic. So the chaotic part is sort of the feeling of being lost, you know. So very often one can just reflect on their life and be like, man, I'm totally lost. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know. So when we look at what's going on in the larger picture, it's so hard to know what tomorrow is going to bring. What are things going to look like in a month or two? And are there going to be, you know, mass arrests? And I know there's, you know, some positive developments on that front, but from one day to the next, it's like it's really, hard to know. So the chaoticness is to me a sort of sense of lostness, and also how these different things are reacting to each other. So if you have a very tyrannical and authoritarian control freak cop who's just listening to orders that has nothing to do with what's written in the Constitution and the way it should be to protect our liberties, and also just to give mutual human respect instead of treating others like animals. And fortunately, a lot of cops are putting out videos, and some have lost their jobs for calling out some of the things that they're
I saw that. That was awesome, man. That was like, and you're right. I've seen more than one, but that one got big play. I forget what the guy's name was.
Anderson with his last name.
Yeah, he was powerful.
So the chaoticness, in a way, when these things bump into each other enough, it's almost like the egg cracks open and the authentic expression comes out. Just like he was like, I know to do the right thing. Once you determine that you're going to do the right thing, then everything's fine from that point on. And knowing that so well and answering to my calling or doing the right thing, I mean, it opens up a magic and the synchronicities and the protection and all sorts of things that take us on a completely different road than the one where we're lost and we're, trying to find our way, or we're just being reactionary. We're subject to more randomness and less magic and synchronicity. And the randomness doesn't mean that there's no divine plan or purpose, but it needs to set itself free. So it's like encaged and encapsulated in that mind control program. And when it just has that flash of insight, or gives it oneself permission to say, hey, I can do the right thing, I don't need to just do this for the sake of money or a paycheck or to just follow orders, then all of a sudden, we see magic happen. I mean, the amount of support that rallied around this person and the amount of abundance that he created from taking the stand.
Did he get like, was it you? Did you do a video or somebody? They said he'd raised over $200,000.
Yes, that was, I mentioned that in my video.
Okay.
But other people have been, putting out stuff.
That's crazy amazing.
Yeah. So when we take that risk of, letting go of the things that hold us to the system and these dark attachments, based in just survival fears, wanting to take care of our family, but being aligned with something that compromises your better self. Really, I know when we make a choice to just stand strong in our truth, everything really begins to fall into place. I mean, there's a time of needing to process and get some clarity to set, sort of short-term goals. Because a lot of people, they know they have a calling and a mission, but they just have no idea what it is. So, watching and observing and reading the signs, is a really good way. But there's abundance that is built into cosmic and natural law that will take care of us. There are things that we have lost so much touch with that will heal us, transform us, protect us, take care of us, and give us all the medicines and support that we could possibly need. And that's why this is artificial intelligence, and it's so connected to the system and society, because it's giving us a very diluted and distorted and damaging version of something that we could experience in the here and now if we just let it go and do what's right. And when we start to live from the soul matrix, that's why I love the name of your show, that is the energy of ascension. We start to meet soulmates who are friends. We start to have breakthroughs with our family members, because it's not an information battle. It's not about the identities sparring each other. It's about, whoa, we can actually go deeper. We can actually see the beauty in one another and appreciate, each other for our differences, because you've graduated from that whole need to be right and that whole ego thing. And so to me, that's where the chaos can be, because it's locked out of its own house, which is its soul and spirit.
Yeah, right on.
Bubble.
That's what I was talking about. And you just said it right now, but it's like, coming out with the truth is coming out with the truth. And I've said it before on the show, we talked about it. No matter what you're talking about, there's something about the truth. And I think with what's happened with the quarantine and other issues, like if you watch the world stage, I mean, I'm watching some of these news conferences and stuff, different politicians over the last week, and I'm looking at them like, why am I looking at these? And then I'm watching them, and the bad actors are really bad actors. I'm like, wow, this is like, you're owning that part, so I'm like seeing it from the two levels, and still got a little anger going on in that. But when you brought up the some of the potential arrest, you said you've heard some good stuff coming in that's starting to validate that there's got to be something going to go down, because there's been too much information last year and a half with these sealed indictments and all that. But that's when that stuff starts coming to the surface, that's going to create some serious serious energetic patterns, and I know ultimately for the best, but it's gonna bring a lot of people into some soul searching. And you're right
Oh,
about this whole thing. It's that integrity thing, like what that guy did, what that cop did. Uh, he refused to sell his soul. That's pretty much how I would put it. And
he
I
chose.
think we've all, I think, had times in our lives when we've compromised our soul. And I think that's something that's a no can do anymore. And more people are getting that. And people like that gentleman, that cop that came out and said, I'm not taking this video down. And then look what happens. That's the magic you're talking about. But there is a random aspect to it that's basically ignited by that person stepping in their truth and taking a stand, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah. And then this greater currency opens up, and this unbelievable flow, and meeting people that, are much more of like mind.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just going back to a thought that you sparked. And I think I lost it, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of difficult growth periods, because the deprogramming that is going to come from seeing things play out on the world stage where it can't be argued as being a conspiracy anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's actually a fact.
Yeah.
that just happened. So, and there are a lot of facts that people still call theory, but it takes a bit to have the real solid evidence. Because if one experienced it, or a whistleblower, and they went through it firsthand, that's truth to them, but can they prove it? So just like when the physical body detoxes, it can be very, like, there can be healing crises, it can be pretty gnarly. So it's not going to be comfortable for some. It's not comfortable for those that are very much in the know. But just understanding the multidimensional aspect of everything, and how nature works and functions, how it's able to create equilibrium, balance, and correct itself. That's what we need to get in touch with, because that's the truth of what we're made of. The rest of it has made us vulnerable to all sorts of illnesses, diseases, and cancers and things for thousands of years. So we're taking a big leap in our wisdom and how we take care of ourselves and how we respond to physical issues. And there's so many incredible companies and so many incredible products out there that are, yeah. And so I can imagine that, they're trying to make it real difficult for people to get access to it. And we see a lot of censoring, but there's other platforms. There's geniuses amongst us that are free beings that, we just put our heads together, and there's nothing that we can't do. We don't need them at all. They need us because we've been their food source for so long, that they're in such desperation and survival. That's why they won't quit. Because so much is at stake. But at the same time, they have to realize that a lot of us have come here to hold unconditional love, to understand things like MK Ultra, trauma-based mind control, satanic ritual abuse, that a lot of these dark players have been very, very wrapped up in. So we want to help victims of that, but yet we also have to understand that victims of that are also playing the dark villains out there too. Not all of them, but some of them. So the more we understand that, the less we'll stay in the duality of like hatred and those are the enemy. Like, we want to almost drop that duality and go through a much more massive healing, because as we begin to understand that, it actually sets us free, and is a huge part of the shadow work, because those things took place in order to hold a certain amount of power to steer events that took place in the world, even world wars, everything, disasters. Not all disasters, but even the use of geoengineering and weather weapons. So they basically wanted to steer everything, and these are the tactics to possess the body, so that these darker agendas are serving actually a species that if we were not traumatized, or if those people weren't abused, would probably have no real affinity to. But they have that DNA that level of abuse has allowed those beings to basically possess them. If they weren't abused, they also have orphan consciousness, and actually a very highly benevolent, but it's been abused out of them. So we got to help them reconnect. And I feel like that's a huge piece in how we'll take down the reptilian agenda, is to understand what these individuals have gone through, and what made them become the dark beings that they are.
Yeah. Well, and I find it interesting too that, and you're right. This stuff, I mean, the level of uh, control by the controllers, let's just put it that way, it's been so deeply embedded in all across the board for so many years. You kind of got to take a step back and go, wow, man, they're still entrenched in there. And I'll look at the internet. So if you look at Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, um, you know, uh, look at the censoring that's happening. Like I'm thinking to myself, okay, this stuff's starting to come out now, but why are these people being pulled off? And it just goes to show you there's still strong pockets of control there that we got to keep in mind. But
Yes.
I do think too that what you said earlier is happening. I know we're going to try to do our part. We're heading out at the end of the month to get back to work on it, and that is, I think it's pushing us, all of us, to a higher level of unity consciousness and collaboration and co-creation to create other purer vehicles of or mediums of communication, be it a light worker YouTube, or a light worker, or a truth Facebook, or whatever you want to call it. But we're going to be pushed to do this, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, one of the greatest revelations is to realize we are not encaged. We have keys to open the doors to get out and recreate something much better, much more in alignment, and much more community building. And those platforms, I mean, there's other platforms, and some have attempted to do some of these sort of things. But it's hard for people to make that big transfer because they've built up followers, or they're just very used to it, and it's just easy and it's right there. But yeah, there's the diversity diversity of humans is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then there's the oneness aspect of it. But when we're all in our authenticity, it's what we see in nature. And I know I say this a lot, but when we look at the web of life, we're dealing with a diversity that actually sustains ecosystems. That actually is what runs the natural world, and is a part of our ability to breathe air and just have these things be taken care of, that AI actually like imitates and this and that. But when we're in our authenticity, it's like the dots connect. Everybody can find their role, not because they're pushed into it, because it comes natural to them, because that's the thing that they signed up for. So when that starts to really spark in people, it's going to be so easy for it all to fall into place and be like, oh, boom, that worked. When we're pushing through all this heaviness because of constant attack and censoring, and the opposition is always kind of there, and we have to kind of find ways around it, or be patient if there's a put in jail for whatever reason because they're community standards, right? But yet they don't have high standards at all because they allow a lot of sick stuff that actually promotes pedophilia, but that's another story. But yeah, the spark of just everything falling into place really effortlessly, is there. I mean, the ancient civilizations and some of the things in our history have not been taken seriously enough. Some people don't even believe that some of these advanced civilizations ever existed. They have a hard time even accepting that we can go way beyond this human form and activate dormant strands of DNA, because they've learned that it was useless, that DNA doesn't matter. But there's so much to look forward to when we can lift off this lid and not be held in this power struggle and this uncertainty and this confusion that is very much like going to take us into all sorts of highs and lows. And I've been feeling it big time. I've been trying to stay as balanced as possible. But when we really like bust through in a more consistent way and invite people to join us in it, that's what's needing to rise, because a parasitic vampiric system needs something to feed on. And if we all decide, hey, let's come together and hold hands in this and energize each other, because we're allowing each other to be ourselves, that's just going to shrink like a tumor. But right now it's still being, so fed, but these are some of the big breakthroughs that are going to come down for people. I mean, and it's already in your higher self. But the distractions and the survival energy makes it very, very difficult to get the downloads and get that internal guidance and that feeling of being able to connect and hear what that guidance is trying to say, because it's here to upgrade us. It's here to protect us. But the survival energy and all this other stuff, I mean, it creates so much static that that's where it starts to feel chaotic, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was watching a show the other day, and I forget the person's name. It was on Project Camelot. It was an old show about 10 years ago. Really fascinating lady. And she was talking about when that you can put it, and I'm just using this as an example, a metaphoric example. She said, when you come across, let's say, an ET or another type of presence that's telepathic, you can like put a shield around your thoughts. She was talking about that. And when you were just talking about what we're all doing, and the fact that if we keep in mind, at least for myself, I've tried to keep in mind that we have been sustenance, we have been food for these other energies that we weren't in the know about. And that's where the emotions and the competition and the cat fighting back and forth. And I look at it sometimes in the light worker circle, and I'm like going, don't fall into that, because that's actually what's feeding that and has been feeding that fourth dimensional nefarious energy, whatever you want to call it. We've been their food. And you're right, the way out is this unity consciousness embodied, like
Right.
actually the things you're doing, like collaborating with other people, ramping it up, having these round tables. It's the intention of the efforts that's pulling these people together, and it's working.
Yes, yes. And it's incredible how energizing it is. And when it's really on the right level, people feel it. They feel the activation. They feel something speaking to their heart and soul. They feel their higher awareness or their connection with spirit begin to amplify. Um, when we do this, and the intention is right, and we have first found our own personal truth. And it doesn't mean it's fixed. Personal truth is just the ability to flow and meet the sort of demands of our times, and also stay in connection with our passions and our inspirations from a place of being very centered and grounded in who we are. And who we are is so beyond just what we're being told we are. Who we are is able to pretty much handle anything. And we came here during this time because we absolutely can, and it's encoded in us to know how to override this and overcome it. So when we are holding that, the word's almost authentic and sovereign, but to me what it really means is that we're responding to things based on wisdom and connection and intuition, and also not being totally about the self, and having that flow and balance between meeting your own needs and having boundaries, but also being generous and loving and supportive to others. And these are all like basic principles and values that literally are going to take us to a whole new world. And that's the early conditioning. I mean, when you hear about the amount of people that have been bullied and abused, I mean, most people are carrying some serious traumas and wounds from their childhood, and some way, way, way worse. And there's no reason to measure it. But when we think of what we're recovering from, it's crazy, because we're finding our self-worth and self-love again, but more on our own terms, not what we've been taught to think is a good thing to love about ourselves. Instead, it's like we're learning to love maybe the things that were neglected and not supported, that we might have pushed away. So it takes a lot of strength, but it's the most beautiful feeling once people really see it in action. Physical symptoms start to disappear, because ascension symptoms are basically helping us to recover from all of that. And the medical industry takes advantage of these things without helping us to understand what is the root, where is this coming from. And that's why I really love the practice of medical astrology, because it's like, whoa, okay, it brings more of a story into it. It brings more of a relatability. And when you can relate to it, you can more easily heal it. When it's a mystery, it's like, what is this? What's wrong with me, right? Then it's like, doctor, save me. But when we really start to awaken to just ourselves and give ourselves more credit, all these things actually help bring us closer to ourselves, closer to the earth, closer to our soul, and great wisdom and knowledge and healing abilities, and beautiful divine powers that this world is desperately calling us to unveil and unleash. These are the treasures that we're needing to recover.
Right on. Right on. There's nothing I can add to that.
Well, I never went to the doctor growing up, so I learned this. Like, it's not just, I mean, I saw it firsthand. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, I think you told me about this. There was a story back in the 50s where this this controlling aspect kind of took a position in the world, specifically in the US, and that's where your great grandfather made that speech. But in the story, they talk about that they saw it coming and that there was a kind of a nucleus inside the deep state that was white hat. And they said, okay, let's put this plan in motion. Now, I think you had mentioned it to me, but this last week I was doing some research and somebody started talking about it. And they said they've been working on this since the 50s, and I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. So if they had this information, just as the Cabal had information of what's going to happen or whatever access they had to other technologies and whatever, that's pretty profound for this to be going on 60, 70 years. That's a hell of a plan that could really, to me, only be sustained by people that had a knowledge that wasn't, necessarily mainstream. But anyway, so it kind of brought up in my head. I thought, I wonder, those energies, be they, President Eisenhower or people around him that may have transitioned, and disincarnated, but they've got to be working as part of people's teams. And I was wondering, do you ever receive any type of intel or any type of communication at all from an element such as that, to include your grandfather or your great grandfather?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I felt really connected when I was growing up. It was just his presence was there. And there was a lot more around all of that. And I've gotten a lot of information that has helped me to gain a lot more clarity. And there's something called light life. Like, so every once in a while, somebody will just send me something random.
Mm.
And I question things. I don't just take everything like right away, like, oh, it must be, truth. So I sit with it a little bit. And I got something from a woman, an elder, a Native American woman, and she had gotten all sorts of information from this other person that described a lot of us souls on the earth right now that are connected with this light life and these greater missions, is connected to the guardian groups and the more benevolent plan that is a part of what's unfolding. So people are given certain gifts or callings in order to begin to open this up. And then we all meet each other like we're doing now. And that's getting, bigger and bigger. But I've got, and I'll send it to you. It's unbelievable. It describes him to a T, and the type of person he was, and how, and then it gets a little weird. And it's not the most comfortable thing for me to share, but he was given intel about a descendant that would be born. And I've heard this more than once. The people that, one of the defectors who recruited me to go to Mars said he was briefed about you being born at a later time. And then this light life thing was that this benevolent group said, we're going to gift your family line for trying to help us and support us. And we'll bring in, this particular light life to your family. And she's out there doing work right now is the way to describe it. So the woman found me because she was like looking for, okay, what Eisenhower is alive that's actually talking about this stuff.
Right.
And I would say everybody in the family is that. Every human on earth has this. So it's not like, ooh, something is more special, but there was something about something entering the family line to be able to do things that he wasn't able to do. And that I would, we would link up because we all
makes sense.
Yeah, we're all balanced. We're all holding, there's no hierarchy when it comes to spirit, when it comes to missions, right? So we're all linking up in a unified and balanced and equal way, sharing. But this was to offset a lot of the infiltration that I think he had gone through was, I don't know. So I take it with a grain of salt, and that's some of it. But I've gotten so much information over the course of time. And then I get a lot of nasty messages of people that are, I think, buying into some of the rewriting of history that isn't true. And I'm not wanting to be biased or be like, oh, I won't look at that because it's too dark. Like, I'll look at everything. I don't care who I'm related to, right? So I'm not trying to cover up truth because I'm trying to protect anybody. Because looking at all sides of everything is the most responsible thing to do. But I put some presentations together, and it definitely proved itself to be false. Not all of it was true about some of the darker stuff. Right. What has come in more, though, is a lot of validation. the small right woman who wrote a book, I can't remember it right now, but there was a lot about the light teams that he works with, the top Valiant Thor. One woman who had Valiant Thor as a spirit guide her whole life was told by Valiant Thor to meet me at a conference and explain the camaraderie and the fact that Eisenhower and Valiant Thor are still working together, and they're still working very closely with people of the earth. And same with a lot of these beings, right? Who are working with some of these humans on the ground level as that nucleus that you were talking about, to bring about, I think, what we're about to see in the world, which is a huge, huge breakthrough and a shift into you know, more light. But yeah, there are great teams and benevolent forces, and they're working directly with humans. It's very hard for them to, just come in and save the day and do it all. But if we're, really tuned in to our higher self, I mean, we hold this in our genetics. We all have the benevolent greater ET connection, and we all have the ability to, be powerful star seeds on a great mission. And that's where the non-hierarchy is. Anybody who's coming with a strong mission, though, they're just the activators. They're not like above or any better. They're just here to activate those that have become so entrenched and indoctrinated into the programming that they wouldn't be able to necessarily find it very easily on their own. Yeah. And that's kind of what the communication has been through those different groups that have sent me information.
Yeah, that would make, I mean, it only makes sense to me. And I figured that'd probably be your answer. And also too, this nucleus, or this group that we're talking about, that is incarnated, that whole thing to me would have to be, there'd have to be serious cooperation and collaboration and support from benevolent star family, from Guardians,
to be able to see the larger picture, and because it's so hard. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that goes back to some of the visitations that he experienced, and what those groups have communicated since. Now, not all of them are saying the same thing, so it's hard to know who's who, but this is the great thing with the times that we're in. The more we can just be in our center, the more we can be calm and relaxed and in our intuition, and the more we live true to ourselves, the more we're going to be able to see through the lies and deception. So I always make sure I take a lot of time to do that, so that when information's coming at me, I'm not falling prey to any potential disinfo. And so we're all, powerful vessels of that can tune the frequency to something that can work with us during these times, as the upgrades then come in to take us to a whole nother thing where we eventually will connect on a much more face-to-face level with these greater beings, as we, because they are in our galactic heritage, we are a part of these groups. They're not alien, they're not extraterrestrial. They're part of the DNA that we're looking to awaken. Yeah,
and I think there's a lot to be said too for what you're saying too. Like when somebody sends you something, I'm sure you get a lot more traffic than I got, but I mean, I don't look at much, but there always seems to be something that creeps in at just the right time with certain information. And, so we have these dimensional communications and experiences with our teams, and it would only make sense that occurs too at the incarnated level. And because of the way everything's rolling out now, it's like, as you go through your day, everything's like a book. Like you're literally, if you're paying attention, you're literally just turn the page and everything fits. Everything just flows together. And so things like that will pop in. Somebody will send a message, I don't know them, and then boom, and you're given a download.
Oh, it's amazing. That's what got me through. Cause when you feel like really in the maze of it all, and not a whole lot of people are connecting, and you just really need a sign, but you're not necessarily calling out for it. It's like literally just at the right moments, I would get, information that I was like, whoa, okay, yes. It's amazing how that happens. And then there'll be messages that I miss that come and find me. They'll just pop up on my screen. I'll be like, oh my God, they sent that a couple of weeks ago, and I would have totally missed it, but something makes sure that I find it, because I had so much spam. Yeah. So there's so much power and magic. And I mean, and that's, I swear I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't surfing those waves. Not to say that I haven't, my gosh, been in some really, really dark places, but that I've always had my eye on kind of like living between the lines. You're
Yeah.
not, you're just, there's a whole different world going on
Yeah.
right under our noses if we can give it a chance.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Is that, I want to ask you, on your Facebook page, is that cover photo, is that near where you live?
Yes, that's about an hour away.
Because then I think I saw you put some pictures up where you were hiking, and it was like, what? I mean,
Yeah, that
that's
was Mother's Day. That was really
phenomenal,
incredible.
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, and happy Mother's Day to you. I saw
Oh, thank you. And
the
you guys are going to come when we'll all get together and we'll go on that hike. It's amazing.
I would love to. And then you were talking about bears and stuff, so I'm all into that. But is there, before we head out, is there anything happening to your knowledge astrology wise that can kind of give us the state of the union, or kind of what energies are becoming available, or impressions that are being made onto the realm?
Well, we are really, working with something that won't really complete itself until it's completed itself. So when we look at a planet like Pluto, it's death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. So when we're dealing with like a conjunction with Pluto, as far as the transiting planets, that conjunction, especially with like the Saturn Pluto, which has moved into the conjunction with Jupiter Pluto, is still very much like activating each other. They're very close to each other. And that's been the case since December, January, and pretty much all throughout 2019. So it's a very, for some, very slow process. And for some, they've already kind of been through those journeys and initiations, but it's very much about going to, into all these different levels, and it's death. So when we see it near Saturn, it's of the old paradigm, the attachments to the old paradigm. And there is, illness that can happen when we hold on too tightly to something that we need to let go of. So I'm not saying, that's the reason, for COVID. I mean, there's so many multiple factors, but if we just step away from the storylines behind how it came about, and we look at like the energies and what's going on astrologically, we're going through such a huge growth period. And there's a lot that's being purged and brought to the surface that's really hard for people to process. And when we look at like the throat and lung area that's been infected, we want to realize like we need to set our voices free. We need to move through the grief. There's a lot of unconscious grief that people are processing because there's so much more attention on things like human trafficking and pedophilia. And it's so hard for people to process that it gets internalized into the body. So yes, all these other factors count. But when we look at like, well, how can we work with that energy and understand like how that's become a weak point? Lungs hold grief and our throat chakra needs to be set free because it's been very tied into programmings where we express things that aren't authentic, which keeps that frequency alive and keeps the energy dense. So there's a huge growth period connected with speaking our truth. So that's showing up in the astrology. We just shifted from the North and South node being South node in Capricorn, North node in Cancer, to the South node being Sagittarius and the North node Gemini. So right now it's about really conjuring up ancient wisdom that we've held, because the South node has to do with the past and things that we are already well versed in, or things that we've already, gone through. So we went from the Saturn South node, which was the dark cycles of history with the false or the dark controlling agendas, which is very much the Capricorn thing, to reset the energy of Saturn so that we can work with the law of structure without it being, this lower version of it. And then the Saturn moon matrix and the patriarchal agenda, blah, blah, blah. Now it's about how can we utilize our voices to unleash our divine wisdom. So right now, as a growth period that we've just moved into, literally just in this last week, we're going into a major healing of this area of our bodies, which is really good because we don't want to see a second wave of this, virus. If people can really tap into these energies, they should feel just sort of something working them energetically in their throat area. And Sagittarius is connected to, wisdom, connected to life experience, connected to travel, adventure, connected to, things that we were more in touch with when we lived in advanced civilizations and we had more of our DNA switched on. But the Gemini part is, how do we communicate? What platforms are we using? Are we writing books? Are we speaking? Is very much just the communication factor. So that's pretty good. And this weekend, there's a nice sun trine Jupiter and some positive energies coming through. There's a lot of throat chakra healing coming in on Friday. And these are some of the faster moving things, but Venus going into retrograde and some other things. I'm about to do a new newsletter and I'll really catch up with it all. But one of the tough things has been Saturn square Uranus. Uranus has to do with freedom, authenticity, liberation. Saturn, when it makes a challenging aspect, shows limitation and energy blocks. So when we look at the quarantine, that is very much revealed. But when we work with it, we can say, okay, this limitation might be there, but how can we preserve our ability to stay free, stay sovereign, and not, you know, it's like there's a need to go through this. And that's what astrology shows is, okay, this is how it's playing out on the world stage, but we can experience it very differently when we begin to move into the higher octaves of what these planets represent, because there's always a shadow side or lower levels. And as we move through the layers, we can actually get to the higher expressions of all these things. And the higher expressions of all these things is basically the takedown of the deep state and the shift, this paradigm shift, and it's encoded in nature. And that's the thing with dark agendas, they imitate what's available and they twist it in their own, to create their own version of it. And then they use our life force to, and then we're giving them the power to battery up these artificial timelines. We don't realize how much we're actually enabling them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a narcissist when they tell a story. There might be one little 1% truth in it, and the rest of it's just distortion.
Yeah.
That's a great State of the Union. And do you have anything coming up? You mentioned a newsletter, but do you have anything coming up that you want to expand awareness about? Any videos or anything?
At the end of May, Forbidden Knowledge TV is doing a conference, and I'll be doing a 2-hour presentation. I'll be doing a workshop with Portal to Ascension. It's going to be a 2-day workshop. I haven't updated my website, but my website's cosmicgaia.org. And there's other stuff, other projects and things, but I'll update my website and check out the descriptions. Are
those conferences virtual, or are you going to actually go?
No, they're going to be virtual. And then David Rodriguez and I are launching a show that we're going to do together every 2 weeks or so.
Right on.
And it's called Dark to Light, and it's going to be interactive to help people kind of move through these tough times. So we're almost done.
That's powerful.
And we're going to launch that too. And I would love to create more with you and create a roundtable, and we'll talk about that. So
I'm up for anything, anytime.
I know you never stop. You're amazing. It's like, I can't get over it.
I don't know what to do if I'm not doing. Yesterday was a, I got the message, you're not going on today. I'm like, all right. But yeah, it worked out okay. I love you, Laura, and thank you for what you're doing, and best to your crazy husband and your family.
Oh, thank you so much. I love you too. And much love to Morgan and everybody. And we'll see you soon, I'm sure. I hope.
Yeah, I think so. You take care.